Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hello and welcome to the ISO Show. Thank you very much for joining me today. Well, today I'm delighted to be joined by Siobhan Ellwood from Asynt. And Asynt is an organisation that's currently on its journey to implementing the quality management standard ISO 9001 and the environmental standard ISO 14001. So it's a pleasure to have Siobhan onto the podcast today because she started implementing 9001. But then got to hear about our funded programme, which was some European funding to help businesses to be more environmentally friendly. So she's been on the coaching programme for the isologyhub over the last 6 months or so. So yeah, it's an absolute delight to have Siobhan on. So hi, Siobhan.
Hello.
Great, thanks very much for joining me today. So Siobhan, before we begin, could you just explain a little bit about Asynt and what the company does?
Yes, so Asynt is a global provider of world-leading technologies and services for scientific research. It's kind of developed by chemists for chemists. Our laboratory equipment responds to real demands of the industry and the academia world. We've got a lot of customers, obviously, within universities, and it's worldwide as well. So we provide solutions literally from a bench top to a huge lab set, kit out for, depending on the customer's requirements. And not only do we supply our own designed and manufactured products and a vast range of other laboratory equipment from lots of other suppliers, but we have some very clever suppliers who manufacture bespoke products, so bespoke lids and vessels and pressure reactors, etc. Other items, as I say, to meet the customer's requirements. So that's kind of us in a nutshell. We're based just outside Ely in Cambridgeshire, and we celebrated 20 years in business this year.
Oh, fantastic. Well done. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, thanks very much for that overview, Siobhan. And in terms of your role, I know that you haven't been with the company that long, but could you just provide some insight into your role and how you got involved with these ISO standards?
So I was brought in as a temp for 2 months in November within the sales support department, and initially it was to do quotations for the business whilst another member of the team was away, and they quickly realised that they needed to have someone, and obviously I was available to be taken on full time at Asynt from January. Again, still a sales support, raising quotations, helping with sales orders and purchase orders, helping in the warehouse. We're a company that we're about 17 and growing in people. And sometimes, obviously, you'll have lots of people maybe off, for sickness and holiday. So you kind of just have to get in there and, help everyone out, which is a really fantastic place to be, place to work in, where everyone wants to help each other. The ISO part kind of came quite quickly, to be honest, to myself within the month of January. So there was a team of us, there was 3 of us within the business who were kind of given the opportunity to help learn about the ISO, to get us through both 9001 and then 14001. But the person who was leading it hasn't had any experience in the ISOs before. And in fact, no one in the business has, apart from myself. I worked for aviation companies and automotive companies, and of course, the way they work is quite strict, especially within aviation, because if you're providing something that's life critical, like the landing gear, for example, if it doesn't work, then you know about it.
So quality control is quite important in those sectors, yeah.
Exactly that. So
yeah.
The quality control and the change management and the paperwork that has to be filled out at those types of places. But because I was there, and one company helped implement ISO 9001, at the other company was doing all the change management and going through the audits, etc., because we were always audited by someone or other. It would seem nearly every month. It just seemed like a good idea, really, for me to then lead the ISO program. And as I said, because we're such a small business, the other two members of the team, they're there if I need them, but I've kind of just been getting it all done myself.
Great, well done. So it sounds like you've kind of sound secretly enjoying it. Is that fair to say?
Definitely, it very much floats my boat.
Oh, great.
Yes, I've actually thoroughly enjoyed it, and never really thought, even though I've had the experience in the past, never really thought that it could necessarily be a role that I could do within a company and just do that, which is what I would like to do here. I'd like to kind of drop the sales support bit, but we shall see what happens. As I say, we're a small company but growing. So
yeah, I think if you've got a flair for something, and I think with quality management and also some of the other standards as well that kind of dovetail into that, it's either a really great fit or it's not. And I think you either almost like love it or hate it. I think. And I think those that love it can see the potential benefits of it and
absolutely
overcome some of the challenges and barriers that typically may be associated with those standards. So yeah, I mean, what would you say you've enjoyed the most from this experience then?
I suppose, realising that I knew a lot more about ISO than I gave myself credit for, but then seeing the growth that the company's had already.
Oh, excellent.
In what we've managed to, implement or change or review. With the use of 5 whys, I love a good root cause analysis. And again, when I entered, that was completely new to the business. They had absolutely no idea, they hadn't heard of it before. And, that will be part of now of our induction program for when new members start, so that we will go through all of that. But yeah, we've been using the 5 whys, and when things have been going wrong, we've been able to fix them and implement something already to hopefully stop it from happening again.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how 5 whys is so simple but super effective as well. Okay, great. So going back to the standards then, what was the main driver behind looking to implement ISO 9001 and ISO 14001?
So there was, with regards to the 9001, it was very much, because we are growing, it was very much that the senior managers saw that we needed to have in place, proper procedures, SOPs written, heaven forbid that anything should happen to any member of staff here. But of course, if we had to replace someone for whatever reason, that there was nothing written. There was absolutely nothing written down. All the processes were in people's heads. And they wanted to get to a point where they had, proper defined roles and responsibilities for everybody. They wanted job descriptions for everybody. They wanted a proper way of doing things, documented, implemented. So that was kind of the driver for 9001. And then for 14001, it's kind of, again, the management think that we are actually ahead of the game getting the 14001 within our industry. So lots of people or lots of customers will perhaps ask, whether we've got 9001. And a couple are starting to ask, obviously, about 14001 because it's, becoming more and more prevalent and, more apparent that we need to obviously be more environmentally friendly in lots of different areas. So we're kind of getting ahead of the game with that, so that, we can say, oh, we've got this certification, and we're even going to the point at some point of working out, obviously, our actual carbon footprint and, being able to publish proper stats on our website to say, we are who we are and this is what we've achieved, this is what we want to do going forward. And it was very good that the management kind of saw this, and that certainly for 9001 was desperately needed within the business. And as I say, the 14001 is kind of to get ahead of the curve. And, once you've sat down and realised what each standard means or stands for, then they kind of realise, well, actually, we have done a little bit of 14001 already before it was even, thought about. So yeah, it's been good that they've got the buy-in, if you like, that they want the company to achieve these standards.
Yeah, I think, quite often a lot of organisations already have some of the key components in place for ISO 9001 and 14001 because they've already been running a successful business. In Asynt's case, that's been for 20 years. So clearly it's a successful business.
Yeah.
But I think what a lot of businesses find, if they haven't embarked on using a framework for managing the business, they're kind of more reactionary as opposed to looking proactively about what the business needs and it does help to provide that structure, and especially if the company's growing, it provides you with that mechanism to scale up as well. So that sounds as though it's good timing for the organisation that, if you're on that cusp of expansion, to have the systems in place to enable you to be able to leverage your business activities. That's cool. So, Siobhan, you were actively involved in the first cohort on the ISO coach programme.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that we've actually done this. Before we'd only kind of worked on a one-to-one basis with a business. And then obviously we had the isologyhub, which is our digital platform, which is like a DIY solution, do-it-yourself solution. And this was the first coaching programme that combined the isologyhub DIY solution with a coach as well. I was just wondering, how did you find working in a group setting, in a cohort with other people from other businesses?
I thought it was very good for a few reasons. I mean, when you're in a group, especially with other companies who want to maybe just learn, but certainly want to achieve a lot more within that standard, and they're obviously from different types of industries, it's really interesting to be part of that group. And you can hear obviously different ideas from the different companies, or, if someone's struggling with something, you can perhaps offer a solution that you might have, like I tried here to, in an Excel sheet, I'd done some tracking of the project, and I just used an Excel form or guide that was already built into Excel. So, to be able to offer something as well as just, listening and learning, to be able to give something back to the group as well, I found really quite helpful. With regards to the kind of do-it-yourself, I have to say, obviously, being with the one-to-one route for the 9001, I was a little bit guided by what obviously might be needed for 14,001 with regards to, paperwork and getting policies, etc. in place. But yes, it was really, really useful to be in that environment. And also the isologyhub, it's just full of information that you either follow or need or can re-review or re-listen to. So yeah, that was also really helpful to have that data kind of on hand.
Okay, cool. I know obviously the starting point with any project when you're implementing an ISO standard is the gap analysis. And all businesses identify gaps. Even businesses, I think, that have ISO 9001 or 14,001, there will still be opportunities for improvement always, because the standards are based on continual improvement. But I mean, what would you say was the biggest gap or the biggest kind of aha moment that you had then, Siobhan?
I am not sure I could tell you what the biggest gap was because we had so many.
That's quite common. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. Like I said before, with the 9001, we just had nothing documented.
Yeah.
No standard ways of working really, written down.
Which is really common for so many businesses.
Yeah.
They just get on and do things, and because that's the way they've always done it.
Exactly.
But when you have somebody new coming into a business, like you said, let's say somebody got, God forbid, run over by a bus, or somebody wasn't available for a few months, then it's like, okay, so what does so and so do, or how do we pay an invoice, or
yeah, exactly.
who does the salaries? It's quite important, yeah. So having a kind of a systemized way of working is actually, for a lot of businesses, is really uncommon. It's only when they actually implement an ISO standard that they do actually have a systemized way of operating, which is their company's blueprint.
Yeah, honestly, we had so many gaps to fill, and in all honesty, we still do. We've literally just finished our internal audits in July, and obviously there were still lots of areas for improvement and the odd non-conformity. So I suppose there are still big gaps. But then on the other hand, we had, like I said, with the 14,001, the business is fortunate enough to own the buildings that we're in. And last year, the building I'm in now was refurbished and, almost like purpose built internally for us. And above me is our demo suite. So that's where we have all of our actual own products. And of course, that means that we can do videos, we can do, video chats, we can do recordings, all about our products, and, not actually have to spend money or time, or obviously that carbon footprint, getting to see a customer. We can see several of them all at once or all in a day. which of course is a massive saving.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds as though in some cases for 14,001, you were going above and beyond the requirements of the standard to be, even more environmentally friendly, which is always good to know, isn't it? And I think sometimes it's only when you kind of take a step back and evaluate how you operate, what you're doing really well and where those gaps are. And obviously that's the key point of the gap analysis, really. In terms of, looking at the difference that it made to bridging those gaps, so what would you say have been the main differences over the last few months?
So with the 14,001, it was kind of in place, but not fully. So it implemented proper recycling areas within the business for obviously all your paper and plastics and things, but also for food. We do have 2 small little kitchenettes here, and, people bring their lunch or whatever and snacks, etc. So, we've now got the food caddies, and I take that food home to be recycled because we don't have recycling here for the food. And I'm weighing it. I want to measure how much what we're doing. So it's literally anywhere between 1.5 to 3 kilos of food a week being recycled now. So, and, making sure that we've got proper segregation, obviously, for the plastics and the paper, etc.
Yeah, and that can take some time, can't it? I mean, a lot of people assume that suppliers, waste suppliers can segregate the waste and that it's going to the relevant recycling depots, but in some cases it isn't, and it does take time to review contracts, look at where your waste streams are going, and then potentially change your waste supplier as a result of that so that it is actually environmentally friendly, because a lot of these waste management companies do claim to be environmentally friendly, but they're not until you look into them. So yeah, it's always worthwhile looking into that, isn't it?
And then I think that our other biggest thing would be for the 9,001 is the introduction of the 5 whys, because we, as I say, we've already used it to help make things better. We identified, well, it was realised before, but now we've got this documented way of getting everything down and looking for the opportunities to change and improve. The warehouse, it's obviously very small compared to big, massive warehouses you might see for Amazon or whomever. It's a fraction of that size, to the point that we don't even have a forklift. But it wasn't labelled, so that the lanes weren't labelled, the areas on each of the shelves weren't labelled, and that is now done. And so that you can go to our, we use Sage, so you can go to Sage and you can look to find out where any part is. You go to that location and it's there. So, and that was through, we knew we had to do it. We knew it should really have been done years ago. But again, as I say, it was through the 5 whys that kind of forced it to actually come then to fruition. So yes, it's already made a big difference going through both standards.
Great. Okay, lovely. And I mean, what would you say that you've learnt now based on your experience? It sounds as though some of the experience that you had in quality already, like the 5 whys, has really helped to make a difference to the organisation, and it's been an integral part of this 9,001 and 14,001 journey. I mean, what would you say have been your main kind of learning experiences from the creation of your quality and environmental management system?
Well, I think from going through both, we're now going to have an integrated management system, because a couple of the areas obviously do overlap, and, to avoid lots of different paperwork, lots of different policies, instead of an environmental and a quality, we'll just have the one, which I hadn't appreciated that we could do before, even though obviously I've got some of the ISO knowledge from previous places of work, which is really quite neat, and I think will help the staff as well, because obviously I'm generating a lot of paperwork, air quotes paperwork, because that's another initiative we've done, is we've gone paperless.
Great.
So I'm generating a lot of paperwork, a lot of spreadsheets, do this, do that, change control the other. So I think to have one integrated system is going to be a big help.
Yeah.
To the staff. They'll only have to go to one place to find something, or one place to look at something, or when I send out revisions of policies, etc., it won't be, well, this is for this and this is for this. They just have the one bit to read, because we're all busy.
Exactly. It's about trying to make it life easier for everybody, not more difficult. And I know you mentioned about some of the sectors that you'd worked in before, in automotive and aerospace, and that was very, very paperwork heavy. And management systems were in silos as well.
Yeah.
Back then, with separate quality manuals, for example. But yeah, I think with the changes, and the new revisions for the ISO standards, having that same common framework, it makes life a lot easier to integrate them and, hopefully.
Absolutely,
Yeah, reduce paperwork. Okay, so what are the plans for certification now then, Siobhan?
So, as I mentioned, we've just had our internal audits with Blackmores for both 14,000 and 9,001 in July, and we've got obviously some opportunities for improvement to work through. The last step of our one-to-one with Blackmores is actually our first management meeting, which is the beginning of September. But we then will have our stage 1 of our external audit at the beginning of October, and then stage 2 will be the end of November, just because they've got different dates where they're busy as well. So I didn't really want too much of a gap, but we've got nearly 2 months gap. But I suppose that's quite good, because then I can still keep working on these opportunities for improvement, which obviously Blackmores discovered during our internal audit. But it was a really good process. I worked with Sean, and it was a really good process to go through, and understand obviously what's going to happen at an audit.
Yeah, it's a good dummy run, isn't it? A good kind of test run, really.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, with anything that's new, you need to put it to the test. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not going to be perfect first time round either. I think that needs to have a kind of reality check that it's not all going to be 10 out of 10. There will be still more opportunities for improvement. And any change that's introduced within a business, it does take a little bit of time, doesn't it, to adapt and evolve and to be compliant. So that's only natural. So I think that 2 months in between your stage 1 and stage 2 should give you that kind of breathing space to continue to let the system mature.
Yeah, for sure.
Good stuff. So finally then, if you were to give a top tip to anybody who's about to embark on implementing quality or environmental standards, what would you say to them?
To trust in the process. Whichever route you go down with yourself, obviously, whether it's the group coaching or the one-to-one, is to trust the process and make sure that you have the right person in your business to lead the ISO process. We obviously we discovered that quite early on, that of the three of us, the person who was like the team leader in it didn't have the experience, so it wasn't going to move as fast as it has with that person. So yeah, it's getting the right person in place, being open to change, being honest with yourself about obviously where the gaps are, and trying to get those closed, but also manage expectations with the business. So it's been quite difficult for me to impress upon them that things are needed, things are necessary. When it says should or must in the documentation, it means that we really need to do it, and but also trying to impress upon them how much work is actually involved in getting us through ISO.
Yeah.
Originally the boss wanted us certified by August. I'm like, okay then, maybe not.
Yeah, you need to allow time, don't you?
Yeah.
I think, because everybody's got other day jobs to do as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you want to do it properly, it isn't something that you can rush, really. Yeah, I think, with any good recipe for success, you need the key ingredients and a good recipe and, the time to put it all together to make it happen. So, so well done so far then. It sounds as though you've made really good progress. It sounds as though you're in a good position. You're almost at the final stages ready for your assessment. So, thanks very much for sharing your experience and those tips with us, Siobhan. That's been really helpful for our other listeners who will be embarking on this journey as well. So just a couple of quick questions to end with then. If you could gift a book to somebody, what would it be and why?
Well, I don't actually often get the time to read very much, especially obviously with all the ISO work. And then when I'm at home, I enjoy spending time with my husband and our 3 dogs. However, I did recently read a memoir which was all about endurance, and I kind of felt that it was very inspiring. It's called The Salt Path by Raina Wynn. And as I say, it's a memoir, so it's like a true encounter of a couple in their 50s who through no fault of their own became homeless. They made a business arrangement with a friend and he refused to fulfil on that agreement. So they lost their home, and any source of income. And then unfortunately, Raina's husband then was diagnosed with an incurable brain disease. So with all of that, with the little money that they did have, they bought a pretty poor tent, but then decided to walk the southwest coast path of 630 miles and just sleep rough. So not only does this book give you obviously an insight into the plight of the homeless, who are not always time wasters or out and outs or runaways, but it was also an account of their real love, their real courage, and their real determination not to give up all of them, despite all of their many problems that they'd endured, obviously during the difficult journey. So it sounds quite a sad story, but it is it's inspiring.
It sounds really inspirational, actually. And and obviously I don't want to know the end because I've made a note of that, the salt path, and we'll put that in the show notes as well if anybody's interested in clicking on that link to download that and listening to it either on on audiobooks or to read it. Yeah, that's
very, very uplifting.
Yeah, I was like hanging on, for every word then to find out what was happening towards the end. But I'm gonna listen to it on audiobooks, and
no, I won't say. No plot spoilers. And
find out. But it sounds as though you've had some endurance as well to go through this project to get going on a lighter note. Yes.
Yeah.
And do you have a favourite quote at all that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I recently saw a quote from Alan Cohen, and he said, "Personal growth is not a matter of learning new information, but unlearning old limits."
Oh, I like that one. I haven't heard of that one before.
I thought it was quite powerful, and I also think it's quite relevant, obviously, again, to me going through the ISO process with Asynt.
Yes, yeah.
Not just for myself, but also for everyone else, for they need to kind of unlearn what they've done and rejig it. And, so, I thought it was quite good.
Because you're only basically limited by your own beliefs, aren't you, at the end of the day? Or, if a company has certain beliefs that they're not going to do this or not going to do that, or we can't do this, we can't do that, then that's the way it will be. So if you kind of strip that away, then the world's your oyster. And I think in business, we always need to innovate and move forward, don't we? So it's good to kind of look at lessons learned, but not be held back by it. So I love that one. Cool. I really appreciate that, Siobhan. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, best of luck with the rest of your ISO journey.
Thank you. We'll let you know how it goes, but I'm feeling confident, and as I've said, it floats my boat, so we won't fail.
Good. I like your attitude. Awesome. Yeah, thanks once again, Siobhan.
Okay, thank you.
So if you were inspired by Siobhan's journey of implementing ISO 9001 and 14001 and you'd like to find out a little bit more about what the ISO standards have to offer, please do click onto the show notes on whichever audio player you're listening to, whether that's Spotify or iTunes. Remember, over at the isologyhub, we've got access to all those resources that Siobhan mentioned earlier on. If you're looking at being more environmentally friendly or looking to raise standards in terms of implementing ISO 9001 or ISO 14001, we have got an offer on at the moment, which is a bug off offer, which is buy one isologyhub membership and get one free. So that's a saving of about £1,200 a year, which is cool. And if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, then please remember to like and subscribe as well on your preferred media player, because that then gets this podcast out to more and more listeners that are interested in this topic as well, that are interested in looking to raise their standards. And also, if you'd like to leave a review, we'd be really grateful, because that also helps too. So thanks once again for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of the ISO Show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.